Let's talk about anxiety, because I think that from what I understand and the feedback I get, CBD is really predominantly effective for people that would say they have anxiety. And so do you guys have any stories or cases of it working or it not working for anxiety?
Well, with my patients, if they come with anxiety, statistically, they will end up mostly on CBD. But I always ask them what their THC history is, and maybe 1 out of 10 patients will have relief of their anxiety from CBD. From THC. So in those patients, I'll always dial in a little THC with their CBD. So it's not, 100% CBD, but the success rate on anxiety is probably 80%. It's amazing. It also depends. One other interesting thing to me about anxiety is a lot of these patients have early morning awakening. In other words, they're exhausted, they fall asleep at night, they wake up at 3 or 5 in the morning when we have cortisol spikes. And there's something about whether it's a cortisol effect or something else related to their daytime CBD stops their early morning awakening. So those patients who have trouble sleeping and they're getting up at 3, then at 5, if you give them medicine just at nighttime, have very little success. If you give them a little bit of CBD a couple times, and just a few milligrams a couple times a day, within 3-4 days, they reset their sleep and start getting to be able to sleep until 6 or 7.
For the patients that we've seen for anxiety, it's the females tend to be responding better to the 20-to-1 ratio. Not always, though. There seems to be a small subset that is responding to a little bit more THC for their anxiety. Same with males, similar to the migraines. Same as kind of a crossover. We've seen more the 1-to-1 ratio do pretty well for a lot of anxiety in males, but some do respond to the 20-to-1 too. So you have to kind of experiment, unfortunately, and find what works best for them. But if it's chronic anxiety, more ongoing, then small doses daily seems to work best. It's better to prevent than it is to actually treat, or for all conditions we found with cannabis. And also, if it's maybe situational anxiety, we have a lot of patients that have social anxiety. So they'll take a small dose of 20-to-1, say 2.5 milligrams up to say 10, if they're about to go into, say, a social setting where they're anxious or nervous.
We find with anxiety, we tend to get better results with the 20-to-1 or higher ratio. When they start taking THC mixed with it, because THC can exasperate and make it worse. So just to say a little bit of THC, you have to specify indica, not sativas. Sativas are stimulating, indicas are relaxing. So you want them to relax, otherwise it's going to stimulate their anxiety.
Yeah, I find with the THC and anxiety thing, THC can give you a little bit of a sense of being out of control, right? And I always imagine that part of the reason why the THC can stimulate further anxieties, if you already feel a little like you're out of control in life, or life is a little out of control, that adding a little more fuel to that fire can actually be a little disruptive. And so I've noticed in my circles that 20-to-1 CBD as a predominance has definitely been the most effective. And I'm wondering if you have secretly had any parents that have treated their children or teenagers with CBD for anxiety, because I know some people in my circles, so I'm curious if that also translates to a younger demographic.
I treat a lot of kids in my practice. I mean, the most common are probably seizures, secondly autism, and then ADHD, and ADD, which to me, from a cannabis perspective, from a Western medicine perspective, the drugs are so different that you have to treat them as different diseases. But my experience with cannabis is they're the same. The focus is brought back for their ADD when their anxiety decreases. So we usually will treat, those are common illnesses and issues, complaints to have together. And I kind of look at them as one illness, and it works out well from a cannabis perspective.
CBD is really effective for anxiety, and usually you can do low dosing, micro dosing with that. You don't have to go too high.